Welcome to Series 2, Episode 1 of Old New Borrowed Blue. Yet we're doing these in series of 6 because I thought it might be nice like that. I'm made up to say for this first episode of Series 2, we are joined by Gav Buckland, podcaster, journalist, author, stat man. If there's anything that Gav doesn't know about Everton, it's probably a lie or not worth knowing. I think that's fair to say, Gav. Have I missed anything out there?
I don't think so. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not a journalist. I just think I'm a journalist.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm actually not. I'm just generally a bit of a blagger and that type of.
yeah, I
I
figured
just,
it
I
was.
just, yeah, I just think I am, but I'm not. I'm not really. I just sort of, do podcasts on the Echo and stuff. But I'm actually not a journalist. I'm just a jobbing, normal guy. Really, this is all a side hustle for me, Les, as they say these days.
Yeah, I liked the journalist thing for years and then eventually got a qualification and never did anything with it. So.
Ah, right, Les, that's not great, is it? I've got no journalist qualifications at all, but I do think I'm on some sort of opposite, really.
Well, there we go. Well, between us, we're a full journalist anyway.
Yeah,
So
full journalist. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that'll do. Right, got a good list of old new borrowed blue here. If anyone's unfamiliar with the format, it's basically you pick your favorite former player, favorite current player, favorite loan player, and then just your favorite Evertonian or thing about Everton. It's like a nice Everton podcast with no bad news, no PSR, no financial fair play. None of that nonsense. It's just all the good stuff we love about Everton. Just before we get into that though, Gav, what was the first Everton game you went to, or the first one you remember?
Well, the first game went was the first one I remember, which was the 5th of February 1972, which was just after my not ashamed to say 6th birthday, and I got taken to see Everton against Walsall in the FA Cup fourth round at Goodison. A game that you can, because the wonders of YouTube, you can now see that game on YouTube, the Granada highlights. And yeah, it was me and Paul the Ask. It was his first game as well.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and it was it was memorable. It was. I've said this before. We only had the black and white television at the time. It was the first time I'd seen a game in colour.
Oh, of
Yeah,
course, yeah. So if you've just been watching
because
it on a black and white telly,
yeah, I don't ever watch some football in black and white. I watched my first match of the day the month before, 1st of January 72, which was Alan Ball's hybrid debut for Arsenal against Everton. He just signed for the Gunners from us, and was allowed to stay up and watch match of the day for the first time. So that was in black and white. And yeah, it was so it was a big early part of '72 was a big time for me. Yeah, and it's just weird, first game in colour. And the thing was, it was the colour that affected me. Green grass,
yeah,
and like any game, I think people's first game, the stadiums just look massive. The television doesn't really do justice to the size of the ground, especially for the young lads. So, I mean, I'd like to think the reason why my first game didn't make the headlines on the back page of newspapers the following day is one of the most famous games in English football history. Took place at exactly the same time. It was the afternoon when Hereford knocked Newcastle out the FA Cup, and it was that was the same time as my first game. So yeah, it was it's memorable. It's one of them things, isn't it? You always remember. You should always remember your first game.
yeah, definitely. That's the one that always gets wheeled out every FA Cup year, isn't it? Was that Ronnie Radford?
Ronnie Radford, Ricky
Yeah.
George. Yeah, yeah. It took me years to realise. I think it was only when the internet started that I realised that the two games took place at the same time. And yeah, and fortunately for me, the Walsall games, it's there for posterity to be watched on the internet. Thankfully,
What was the score?
we won 2-1. It was also, if you want a really bad stato fact,
Bring it on.
yeah. More people watched football that day on Merseyside than any other day in history. There was 46,000 at Goodison, 56,000 at Anfield. They played Leeds in the FA Cup. That was a massive game. That was the biggest game in English football
Yeah.
on the day. And Tranmere had their record attendance that day as well. They had 25,000 for the visit to Stoke in the FA Cup as well. So I think it worked out once. It was 126,000 people
That's
watched
amazing.
football on Merseyside.
And everyone playing on the same day.
And yeah, if you think about it, and then Everton, Liverpool, they drawn together in the FA Cup. They did play on the same day up until the early 80s. And so that's 100 and odd thousand people in and around Stanley Park. all at the same time. They didn't have like staggered kickoffs or anything like that. And that was and that was before most people got public transport and stuff. So there's a lot of people milling around at the same time. Think how busy it is on match days now at 40. You multiply that by 2.5 times again, you get how many people are in the area.
Well, that's it. Yeah, most people are getting there by train and bus as well.
Yeah. So there was, thankfully, hundreds of thousands tried to get there by car. It might have been a bit awkward, but and not a lot of people like cars those days, and it was very much, walking to the game now for most people.
Yeah, I just think like Kirkdale Station after the match is bad enough as it is, so I can't imagine what it'd be like on a day like that.
Oh yeah. And midwinter as well. Yeah, it was a memory. I remember I think it was in the Park End stands. I think, yeah, fairly certain. And I just remember going in and just, walking that thing about walking up the steps. And it's one of them things that, though it's 52 years ago now, I vividly remember walking in and then just seeing how wide the ground was,
Yeah.
really. And you don't appreciate that on telly, do you? How wide the ground is.
No.
And it was, it's a memorable experience, and thankfully one of many memorable games at Goodison.
Yeah, which we'll go into right now.
Yeah.
So we'll look at your favorite old former player. No one's chosen this player as yet, but then no one's really as old as us two that have been on it yet. I don't think so. Yeah, a great choice. Do you want to just
Well,
go
no,
into him?
yeah. I mean, I thought about this, but actually, no, I didn't think about this. I would name it. He's my favourite all-time player, and has been ever since really he started. And there's been a bit of background to this in that, and it makes sense. I remember reading about 10, 15 years ago that a team of Dutch psychologists, you have to bear with me on this one, they did a study of people's favourite footballers just to see if they had any patterns. And what they found was that people's favourite footballers the football tends to be at their peak when that person is 14. So, and that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because a lot of things happen when you're early teens that really, they stay with you for the rest of your life, don't they? I mean, I still listen to the same music as what I was listening to when I was 14, 15.
Same.
Your social life changes, doesn't it? You become, you're not a child anymore. The world opens up for you a little bit. You're far more impressionable than what you have been before. And it makes sense for people's favourite teams and favourite footballers and stuff like that to be also around that age. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, two of my favourite campaigns at Everton was 80-81 and 81-82, which is Gordon Lee's last season and Howard's first. And that's purely because I was at that sort of right age, what we're talking about. And Inchie just signed, I think I was 15 when he signed. And I loved Inchie. He took a bit of time to settle in the team. I think Howard wanted to play him in midfield, and I think he ended up, he really was a striker, I think, really.
Yeah.
And that 84, 85, or that calendar year, 84, it was his goals at Oxford, obviously kept us in the League Cup, maybe kept Howard in a job. He provided the single most memorable moment I've ever had as an Everton supporter, which is the goal in extra time against Southampton at the end of extra time at Highbury in 1984. I was right behind the goal. And again, that's one of them vivid match day memories. I can still remember that. And that was the best celebration I've ever had in my life. And then 84, 85, he was brilliant. I'd argue that he was certainly, one of the best, if not the best player in the country when he got injured against Sheffield Wednesday. And at that time, he was, as an outfielder, was playing at a peak that I've not seen many Everton players, if any, play for us. And I just loved him. I loved that he was quite happy. He's a good guy. He's great. He's obviously a good lad. There was a lot of joy there when he played. He really celebrated goals. But the only thing I'd say about when he came back from injury, though he won the title again in 86, 87, he wasn't the same player. He lost that. It was a little bit like, when Michael Owen got injured, he lost that. He come back, he was still quick, but he lost that extra yard of pace. And Inchie was the same, and I think it affected him psychologically, because those say like he was obviously a great fella. He had that nasty streak that all great players had. He'd leave his boots in, and he was not afraid to mix it, even though he was like 5'7", whatever. And he had a lot of attributes that all great players had.
Yeah,
and I remember being gutted when he got injured.
Yeah, well, he was on the verge of an England call up there, apparently, wasn't he? He was
Yeah,
playing himself into England, and obviously that was just before the World Cup year in '86 when there was four Everton players in the team, wasn't there? '86,
yeah.
including
Stephen,
Lineker, like,
yeah, Lineker,
yeah,
yeah. But it was. I remember thinking, oh no, because he was so important to us.
yeah,
And then a Gray and Sharp started, and that took a bit of time to gel. But yeah, I loved Inchi. I've unfortunately met most of the team from the mid-80s, but I've never met Inchi, sadly. I guarantee if I did, Les, he'd be covered in love bites in about 20 minutes, I think, you know. There's only two people I've ever met who've yet to meet who would go weak at the knees. The first would be Susie Quattro, who was my first crush in the early 70s. And the second will be Inchi, you know, yeah, I love him. It's good to see him back in the country, and you see him at the game now, and he's just a great fella, and I love him to bits.
yeah. He's kind of. I'm not gonna say he's not forgotten, but he's kind of understated, I think, in that '84, '85 team, isn't he? He's not like people always talk a lot about Southall, Reed, Shaw. Probably don't talk so much about Heath. I don't think.
No, well, he wasn't playing in Rotterdam, was he? At the end of the season, at the business
Yeah,
ends where there's the photographs with trophies and stuff. Inchi, you know, he had the tracksuit on in again against QPR. Come on after the game, and so you always remember those are the things that people outside the club remember. That
yeah,
you said Everton 84, 85, they'll say Andy Gray, won't they? But
yeah,
and they'll forget that actually when Ince was in the team, we were a far better team before Christmas '84 than what we were afterwards. We just changed it slightly,
yeah,
like great football, into feet and around the box, dead quick stuff. And Ince and Graham had a great partnership. And he is forgotten. And I think that's, I know, though he did win the title, the importance of his goals in early '84. I mean, that's it. His goals arguably saved Howard.
yeah,
And he should always remember that. And he's a genuine Everton legend for me, but, you know, my favourite footballer. And it's funny, it'd be interesting to see it on these shows. Do people's favourite footballers all time change? You just find one and then that's it. You know, it's like it's like meeting the love of your life, isn't it? You're never going to move on from that, really.
yeah,
And I think, as I say, I think that the age thing's quite important. You can tell a lot how old somebody is if they tell you what their favourite footballer is, really.
yeah,
I've had other players that I really really liked, and going back, Premier League era. Kale was obviously really, like, I love Fellaini.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even though he's big, there was something about Fellaini. He only recently retired. I thought he was a great player. Never understood. He got stick in some quarters, but his technique was second to none. He really gave the ball away. Big presence in either box, and he had chest control. He'd kill for, wouldn't he?
Oh
Really?
God, yeah. He could trap a
Yeah,
ball with his chest, couldn't he?
yeah. And there's other players, that I liked. I mean, from the early mid '80s, I know I don't want to go. I could talk about but I mean, I love Kevin Richardson because I used to go to the reserves a lot in the early '80s. I'd
Yeah.
turn up at the reserves '81, and you'd have Southall in goal. You'd have Kevin Ratcliffe, John Bailey, Gary Stevens, McMahon, Graham Sharp, all playing for us, Kevin Richardson. And a lot of them players, the end of Howard's first season, that was the first team. And I love Kev Richard. I once saw him score 5 goals in a game against Blackburn for the reserves, and he became hugely underrated player.
Yeah.
Richard, he left in '86. And you know what? If he'd have stayed, I think he would have been captain
He went to,
after
is
Ratcliffe.
that when he went to Villa? Because he won the
He, he
title.
went. He went to Watford first, and then he
Oh,
went
right.
to Arsenal. Obviously, won the
Oh,
title.
he won the title with Arsenal, didn't he?
Yeah, and the ironical thing, it was his cramp, wasn't it, that led to the added time
Oh, was it?
at,
Yeah.
at Anfield in '89. And they got McMahon, like, going, the famous
The
1
1
minute.
minute.
That bit shows. And they played together for Evans youth team 10 years before. And it was Richo who took the ball off John Barnes. Nobody tried to dribble it from the corner
Yeah.
flag. And he was a winner, Richo. Captain Villa at Wembley, '94 in the League Cup. First player to win the 3 major honours, domestic honours with
Oh,
three
yeah, of
different
course.
clubs. And yeah, he'd be another favourite of mine right near the top. Yeah, great player.
Yeah, just quickly before we move on to your current player, then just about that sort of that mid '80s team. It's quite easy to think when you look back, it all just kind of clicked. Like, sort of, you've got the Adrian Heath goal against Oxford, the Kevin Brock back pass.
Yeah,
It's kind of easy to think it just kind of clicked after that. But when you say like they were there from like 81, 82 in the reserve
yeah,
together, that team kind of came through, and it shows that you do need patience, because I know
yeah.
people were running out of patience at the time because the club weren't doing well. That people calling for Kendall's head, but it just shows that if you have got that nucleus of good players and you can keep them together and bring them through, that's what can happen.
Yeah, and add the right players. I mean,
Yeah,
Howard had Peter Reid, and he had Andy Gray, who gave a little bit more experience and a bit like a bit of street wisdom that perhaps wasn't there. And he was a lucky manager, Howard. To be fair, and he made the most of his luck. And that after his signings didn't work, fortunately for him, he had a very, very capable reserve team. That a lot of them come through under Colin Harvey, and he was able to call on them, and he was lucky in that respect. But he
oh
made
yeah,
the most of it, and and the one signing that did work was Southall for him. But yeah, you're right, like, and that doesn't happen now, does it?
no,
That isn't happening. If Howard's 81 was Everton manager now and came, he'd probably be out the door in 2 years, 2.5 years, and he'd certainly be out the door by the time whatever now is the late '83 would have been out the door. And fair play to Philip Carter, but yeah, it is the great example of what happens if you show patience as a chairman. And it was a different time then. Like, God knows what the internet existed. I was just thinking like 8,000 against Chesterfield or Coventry now when you have leaflets and stuff.
God,
What it
yeah,
would be like on Twitter, the fume would be, out of this world, wouldn't it?
it
But
would break
different
the internet.
days, but there was still fume. Like, it was just expressed in far less public way. People were just as angry, believe you me. It's just they didn't have social media to vent that. The only place you could vent your anger that was yeah, different times, but it is so funny. When I think back now, if that happened now, what would it be like?
Yeah, what it'd be like. Yeah. Just on that, then we'll move on to your new player or current player, basically. And I think this one's a lesson to us all in being patient,
Yeah,
isn't it? I think.
absolutely. I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, there's quite a likable squad, Evan. I know, like, we've got our weaknesses and stuff, but there's quite a lot of players. You think, yeah, they're decent fellas, aren't they? And I think there's I mean, the obvious one here is Coleman, isn't it? Because he's been around the parish and stuff, and huge lot of respect for Seamus in terms of his longevity and his what he's given to the club, and is the leader and stuff like that. That's a cliche, isn't it? Leader. Um, but I thought long and hard about this, and I'm going to go with Mikalenko. And I think you've probably given a clue why there, lads, because he is another one who's, we not you can't set aside the stuff, what happened just after he joined the club in early 2022 and all that, and he had to survive, not survive, or they had to live through that, and probably still is to a degree. But he's a prime example of somebody staying in the game as it is, and getting their head down and working hard, and on match days giving of your best. And I think he's done that, and he's got the rewards. So I was reading that is that the who scored ratings for
Yeah,
left back in the Premier League. He's top, isn't he?
he's top, and Andy Robinson second.
Yeah, and quite rightly so. He's been, and last year I thought he did well. The year before, he obviously scored that goal at Leicester. And I think the turning point was he marked Salah really well, didn't he? I think
Yeah,
at Anfield, and he's been exceptional for us. Really, I like to see he had that thing before Christmas where he was getting forwards a lot more. And the one thing about him, he can strike a ball, can't he?
yeah,
And that's not really happened after Christmas, probably because of the shape of the team. And I think if he is going to develop, I like his forward play, the way, like, he doesn't. He's not a left back who'll go. It's not a Baines who'll get to the touchline and then bomb down the wing. He goes into what the old inside left channel, doesn't he, when he gets forwards? And he did against Man United, he hit the bar, didn't he?
yeah,
And against Palace, he did the same. He let the goal of Palace, he got the corner, then hit the post, didn't he, from the corner that he scored from. And I think
Yeah,
that's the way he developed. I do think eventually he might end up as a centre half, though he's got that build. He's obviously beefed up a lot over the last 18 months, which is natural. But he's a proper player. Mikalenko, you don't see him rattled, and he just gets his head down, and he's who's good. He's a 7 on 10 guy every game, and that's that there's a lot to be said for that. And bear in mind the circumstances as well. He's my favourite current player.
yeah. Well, as you talk about that, the sort of one of your favourites, most memorable goal celebrations was Inchia Highbury. I think mine was Mikalenko at Leicester because it
All right.
was just so unexpected. And then you get onto the fact that it was Mikalenko that had hit the volley. It was like, didn't even know he could do that. And it was such a good strike. It was just one of those things where we were right down the other end of the ground, and then to see it go in and it just erupted because that was towards the end of that season when we played
Yeah.
our second to last game. It was like really a game we had to win. And it was, it was just dead memorable. And it's brilliant the way he sort of, as you say, knuckled down, gone from looking really quite shaky. Because we went from Luca Dean to Mikalenko, didn't we? So that was a bit of quite a switch because the two
Yeah.
quite different left backs. But he is just at the minute just a really solid fullback. Which I mean, for me, first and foremost, I want my fullbacks to be defenders, and then
Yeah.
anything you can do going forward, that's a nice bonus. But yeah, I think he just complements that defense perfectly. And if you look at that left side now with him and Brantwaite, that's a really good left side to any defense, that isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he adds in McNeil as well into that. When
Yeah,
and I think he's been a bit. I think he's not. I'm not sure about his fitness at the moment. McNeil, he's another player. He's got obviously had a few off the field issues. If you have that like little triangle on the left hand side, that's enough help. Yeah. But that goal at Leicester, going back to it, that was a tremendous. The technique on that.
yeah, because
That
the
was
cross
like
was straight from the side, wasn't it?
Kevin Sheedy-esque. I mean, I think it came over from Moby. It wasn't a cross hit with a lot of pace to work with. It sort
No,
of ballooned up in the air, and he's literally got to take a, it's also thing you're doing 5 aside or 7 aside. Just take a massive swing at it, but he got his technique perfect, didn't he? He
yeah,
kept his right foot on the ground, and he just went technically brilliant shot right into the corner. And like you, I was watching on the telly, like. What was that? But he's shown since that it's not a fluke, and I think that's what I like to see him do a little bit more. Hopefully, when we can afford to push forward a little bit more, it's getting around that box. I'd say he's good to get in the inside left channel and pop a few shots off, and that was. I mean, that was a great header, wasn't it? At Palace,
yeah. That was
you
like
know.
first 30 seconds, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Something
20
like that.
seconds, isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't it something like the quickest goal from a defense fullback in Premier League history or something, isn't it? I believe. One of them,
it sounds
yeah.
like it could be.
If you think, because if you do it, if you, to defend the score in the opening, whatever it was, 30 seconds, you're doing well. Yeah, and I think that's where I'd like to see him develop. But I do think he's still young. He may develop into a top class centre half at some point, hopefully with Everton.
Yeah. Feels like he probably will make that move at some point. Um, right, let's move on to your favourite borrowed player. Interesting choice who Dan, I think, chose as well. For this
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And I
I've
think
heard.
anyone who saw him thought he was
Yeah,
brilliant. So just
yeah.
I'll leave the rest to you, mate.
Yeah, I excluded from this. I know you've allowed this in shows. I've excluded from this discussion players we signed on loan and then joined permanent.
Okay, fair enough.
Because the likes of Gareth Barry did it, I think, didn't he?
Yeah,
Lukaku's being mentioned quite a bit, and
yeah.
Pinar and stuff. I've only looked at players who shone for a little bit and then went, left you wanting more. I mean, you mentioned it, I think, with Paul Dargan, I think, or whatever his name was, it Nice Flu Music, whatever it is.
Oh,
He's called himself.
Died hands flash. It's German for the dance floor.
All right, okay. Sounds like a tank, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Really?
you've got to call him DT now. He doesn't answer to Paul. Just
Oh,
DT.
doesn't he? Right, okay.
Yeah, he's
And
diva.
and I think in your discussion with him, you mentioned one of my favourites, certainly in the days with Terry Curran. And for our younger listeners, Terry Curran was a player that in the dark days when we just got beat by 5-0 by Liverpool, at Goodison, Howard was looking to bring a little bit to the dressing room, and Terry Curran he's the bona fide mercurial winger, but quite a gifted forward as well. And Howard got him in for a month. before Christmas '82, and he was brilliant. Terry Curran. I say a sort of an effect on the team like Landon Donovan had.
Oh yeah,
Same position, but you can see the team change a little bit. And Terry was brilliant. So we beat Luton 5-0 in the game, and John Bailey scored from his own half. And Curran was unplayable, and he left you wanting more. And he went away after brilliant. Went away. He picked it up after the bad Derby defeat, and then Howard bought him. I think there was a few. I think he upset Howard by wanting a lot more money than what he'd been on when he was on loan. It was sorted, and then he got injured. He got injured. He pulled his hamstring, I think, first game, and then, as a permanent player, and when he come back, he never. It never happened for him. He played in the semi-final at Southampton, and he's still playing 84, 85. I mean, he played the Andy Gray hat-trick against Fortuna Sittard. One that comes from a Teddy Curran cross. I think that might have been his last game. But yeah, he'd be one of them. And I think the one I showed, one left me wanting more. Thought, oh no, would have been great was Fernandez. Was it Manuel Fernandez? 2007, I think.
yeah,
Portuguese, I think. He'd been at Portsmouth, hadn't he, and it hadn't worked out.
yeah.
And I remember his first game. I think I can't remember. I think we were playing Blackburn, and he bombed on from deep, beyond the strikers. And Moyes' midfielders are not supposed to do that. So Moyes got stick with his midfield, being negative. What he had the midfield, what Arteta, Cahill, Osman, Pienaar, didn't he? That's
Yeah.
not a bad midfield, is it? If you in terms of ability, and he was just bombed on, and you could see he brings us something different, this lad. And he was excellent for us. Scored that great goal against Man United. I mean, that was a class goal.
That was unreal.
Yeah, and he was obviously a really, really decent player. And I think when he came to it, there was an issue. I think when it was at Benfica, we tried to sign him, but it was all in the fallout from the Tevez affair.
And Mascherano won it, yeah.
Yeah, and Mascherano, there was a big crackdown on. Not that we've heard the last of the Tevez affair in relation to Everton. we can't go there. No, we can't go there. Yeah, and I think there was an issue over that, so it was blocked, and he'd come on loan again the following year, and was just as good. And you just thought, wish he'd stayed, because he could have been one of them players who took us to another level. The only thing I'd say apart from that is whether you had the money if you buy him and then buy Pienaar around the same time. Maybe in a choice of both, but yeah, Fernandez was a great addition on loan. Did exactly what you want a loan player to do, and left you wanting more and thinking, "Oh, I wish we kept him." And he only retired. He was still playing until about a year ago, wasn't he? He played in Russia, I
22,
think, for a bit.
23.
Yeah, he played for Portugal. Probably argue that when you look at his career, wasted his talent, because he had real ability, that lad. And I'd love to have seen him in permanent deal for Everton, playing for several years for us, because he would have given us something that nobody else in the Moyes era did. Real player who could come from deep and get on the ends of things would have been great for us.
Yeah, if you look at his career, like he probably averaged about 20 games a season.
Yeah,
Like that, 20-25 games. So he would have been one of those players who might have been a little bit frustrating, but I think for the time he'd be on the pitch, he would have been brilliant.
well, I think Moyes probably had around that time. I think Moyes was his peak years at Everton, wasn't it, really? And I think
Yeah.
if you're going to say who's going to be a manager that gets the best out of you, I think Moyes would have done, really. You mentioned another one. I think it might have been on the same one with Paul, was Ferrari. It was
Yeah.
around the same time, and he was a good player. But I think he was one of them players. I think I got told is he would only play if he was 100% fit.
Yeah.
One of these a lot of overseas players were like that at the time. I think that's changed now. And he was also a decent player around that time. But yeah, Fernandez was a really, really good player, and I would like to have seen him flourish for Everton.
Yeah. And just on that goal against Man United, it's like, so I've sat in the park end for years, and it was one of them where you see them every now and then from when you're behind the goal, don't you? And it's like, as soon as it left his foot, you think that's flying. Richarlison was the same against us the other week, where as soon as that left his foot, you're like, yeah, that's in. It was one of those, an absolute rocket. And I think I said to Dan, I've never seen the United crowd silenced quite like it.
Yeah.
when that
That
when
that was we lost it. We had Ian Turner in goal that day. I think
he
if we'd
dropped
had
it,
like
didn't he?
Howard in goal, he dropped the ball and the game was going nowhere. And that
Yeah.
the goal, the Fernandes goal was so effortless, wasn't it? I was thinking about this, like, I should answer this question. There's not going to be many from the last 5 or 6 years that's going to come out here, you know. No one's going to be saying Donny van der Beek or what was his name? Funny enough, talking about loan players in Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago. We went to one of these tours of the local diamond merchants. It was dead interesting, and they had the shirts of famous players who'd obviously been there and bought stuff.
Yeah.
And one of them was El Ghazi's shirt, and it was an Everton shirt as well. And I was
Was it?
thinking, they obviously don't know the story behind this. This was not the peak of anybody's career being at Everton.
That was
And but our loan deals, to be honest, over the last gone Mangala, I think a lot of them have just been. I've not been the best of the really
no.
going back for several years. But we did have, obviously, on Martinez's first year, 2 or 3 really good. He then turned into permanent deals. But I've excluded them. I don't think that's a technical thing. You should
That's a
crack.
good shout, actually.
You need to crack down on that.
I
Crack
might have
down
to.
on that for future pods. You can only have lone players who are just lone players and not permanent at some point.
Well, that throws my Duncan Ferguson one out right out the window as well, doesn't
Well,
it?
yeah,
Maybe you could say
yeah.
Ian Durant instead.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention this. I mean, how Duncan had been on Everton's radar for several years. Howard tried to sign him a couple of times
Yeah, I
in the
remember.
early 90s, and he wasn't one that sort of came out of left field. I mean, I just started. I was listening to, we mentioned Durant, and Durant was a good player.
Yeah.
But he came to Everton injured. He'd been done, I think, in a Rangers Aberdeen player game, and I think he thought he was going to be one of these great Scottish footballers, but he was never the same.
Yeah.
After his injury, and I think he came to Everton with the reason that he was, I don't use the word crock, but he was obviously near to it.
Yeah.
But he would Pete Durant would have been a great sign for Everton, but it would never happen. He was probably, dare I say, too good for us in the mid-90s. But one or two others would be. Remember, Durant was the one where he spelled the name on the shirt wrong, wasn't it? Remember that? He only put up with one R.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Yeah,
I was down at Portsmouth when they made the debut. They both came up against Portsmouth. So it would have been then. Yeah, it would have been that game.
Yeah, he had the Durant. It was Durant, wasn't it? Yeah, that was one. That was one. I remember talking about Ferguson. Have you heard the story about Alan Myers' story about Ferguson, about the fella ordering the shirt for Ferguson when he first joined? He ordered the shirt. So you can have two Duncan Ferguson shirts. Said, what do you want on the back of the first one? And he said Ferguson. And I said, what do you want back on the second one? He said, ditto. So still closer, 2 shirts. One with Ferguson and one with ditto.
That is classic Everton club shop.
Brilliant. But yeah, it was. I remember Alan telling me that it was a great story. But yeah, there were some bad loan signings and some good ones. But I think Fernandes right up there.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Definitely. I think like weirdly the best loan signing Everton have sort of overseen in the last few years of Brantwaite to PSV. I think
the other way, yeah,
that worked perfectly. I think that's been our sort of best loan deal for the last few years, probably.
Yeah, I tell you, going back 20 years, the loan deal that saved a player was probably Osman, because I mean, Ozzy. Yeah, and because Ozzy, the thing about Ozzy was like he was class up. Talk about favourite Premier League players for Everton. Ozzy's right up there for me.
Yeah.
Technique to kill for. Could have played for like a Wenger team in the midfield, Ozzy. And the thing about people forget about Ozzy is he was a star of the youth team in 19. He got a bad injury, and him and Barry were in the same age group for England. And Barry was playing Premier League football 5 years before Ozzy was, because Ozzy's injuries were so bad. And he ended up putting him on loan. Did really well at Derby. He was at Carlisle as well, was he? And he come back a different player, got into the team, and then kicked on from there. But he lost about 4 or 5 years of his career, Ozzy, that people forget about. And he was a superb player for Everton. Another player I loved a lot.
Yeah, he was class. Used to get a lot of stick needlessly, I felt.
I think that comes. There's a couple of things that some of his left-footed P-rollers could frustrate on occasion. So when he did put his foot through with the left foot, he could do it. He had that side foot. It never seemed to work. I think it worked once at Aston Villa. But I think local born players are like that. And tell you what, he was good. Ozzy was good in the air for a little fella. But I mean, I think he jumped. Was it the City centre half here, might have even been company. In 2011 to score the winner at the Park End, and he scored a great header goal at the Emirates against Arsenal. Yeah, he was a terrific player, also, and he's an example of somebody, as you say, like Brandford, where going away on loan made him as a player.
Yeah, definitely. Right, we'll move on to the final category, which is blue. I think you got a couple for this if you want to run through.
Yeah, I thought I need a bit of a leg up on this, so I looked on the. You've seen the Wikipedia list of Everton supporters.
I think I've seen one on Toffee Web, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. Some of them are tenuous to say the least,
Yeah,
aren't they,
Judy
really?
Dench is on there, isn't she?
Yeah, and I was looking at that, thought I'm not having that, But when in the pre-internet days and people didn't prefer, and football wasn't as trendy as
Yeah.
stuff as it was when I was, younger. There's only one celebrity Everton fan, and that was Ed Stewart, the disc jockey, and he was. If you ever wanted somebody in the talk about Everton, Ed Stewart always talk about it, and he was a massive Everton fan, and in typical Everton style, he wasn't. I think he was down south. He became an Everton fan because his dad took him to see Everton play Chelsea in the late 40s, and Chelsea won 6-0. And he felt sorry for us, but he actually played for Everton. He appeared for Everton. There used to be in the early 70s a show called, and it was before my time, Quiz Ball, where they had like teams of like representatives of clubs to be players or manager, whatever, teams of 3, plus a celebrity fan. And Ed Stewart was the Everton celebrity fan. So he'd be in the team, be Harry Catterick, Joe Royle, and Ed Stewart was the celebrity supporter. One famous occasion, and the BBC wiped this, I would love to have seen this. They were playing Falkirk, and Falkirk was Andy Roxburgh, Chick Murray, like a Scottish comedian, and Alex Ferguson. So Ferguson and Roxburgh playing, Everton on the telly, and Everton winning by 1 point. And the last question of the quiz went to Falkirk, and it was like, name the previous year's derby winner. So Andy Roxburgh goes, I've got it covered. Got this to win the quiz. But he named the previous year's Grand National winner by mistake.
Ferguson took that well.
And Ferguson went, absolutely. This is in the studio, absolutely. Jesus Christ. Like this, like on camera. And Fergie Fury all over him, and he's only been like a young man. The first ever Fergie hairdryer was against Everton on the telly, like in the quiz. And I think I made inquiries about it a few years ago, and I think they said they'd wiped it. It would have just been priceless. I would love to have seen that. And Ed Stewart was the celebrity Everton fan at that time, and there's been a few, hasn't there? I think John Hurt, the actor, was Big Blue, and I think
Gordon Honeycomb. Remember the TKM newsreader?
Yeah, he was once Britain's most sexiest man, Gordon Honeycomb. If you'd ever seen him, you might find that's a surprise. And in the late 60s, because he did the Alex Young film, didn't he? The Golden Vision. I think he was involved in that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think and there's a few in the modern era. Tommy Fleetwood's already been on, and he'd be present day, like in the limelight, And Matt Dawson. I've done stuff over the years for Question of Sports, and Matt Dawson, obviously team captain, he was a Big Blue. And I tell you, he was a really Big Blue. He was in the sport. But you remember Steve Smith, the high jumper?
Oh yeah,
high jumper. He was and I knew Steve a little bit. He was a massive Blue. But my favourite one is, and because I knew him a little bit, was John Parrott, who in the early 90s, and he's a great snooker player, did not hide his Everton supporting desires under the bushel, and he was always great value, and he was actually knew his game. John Parrott very well knew the game. I think he co-commentated for Radio Merseyside a couple of times in the 90s, and he wasn't a celebrity fan as such. He was a football supporter, but he knew his football, and I always had a lot of time for him anyway. And he'd be my archetypal Everton supporter. But there's been quite a few, hasn't it, really? I think Tommy Fleetwood's great, isn't it, really? But when you see that celebrity list, you go, really, really. And I should have got it. That's a good. We should do that actually on one of your shows. Get a list off Ricky and test people. But yeah, John Parrott was probably showed me age a little bit. He was World Snooker Champion 1991, in case you don't know, and massive Blue. But there's been quite a few in the in the limelight over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, some more plausible than others. I think it's,
I think that is an understatement, really. I mean, the one everybody would associate would be Sylvester Stallone, wouldn't it, really? Do you reckon?
yeah, I tell you what, there is no greater clip knocking about than Sylvester Stallone taking that sip of, was it
Ah,
coffee? Was it tea? Was
yeah,
it
yeah,
bottle in the main stand? His
yeah.
face just implodes.
Yeah. Mind you, there's been a few faces pulled like that from the main stand because of our performances over the years, from my experience.
Yeah, you don't just need the hot
But
drinks.
yeah, but it was yeah. In opposite, Carlo was the opposite, wasn't he? Carlo Ancelotti took as cool as ever, like having his cup of tea, whatever it was.
Yeah, he
But
needs to
yeah,
blow it first to cool it down. That was the thing, wasn't it?
yeah, he's cool as. But yeah, I think John Paris, he was a really good fella and a lot of time for. He was good, but there's been quite a few over the years I can think. But I always had a soft spot for Ed Stewart because when I was a kid, he was the only famous Evertonian,
Well,
and
yeah, I can
about
imagine.
30
It's like,
years.
so if you got someone on the radio sort of saying, they're an Evertonian, it's like for me now, if I see an Everton question come up on the chase or something, my ears instantly prick up and you're like, oh, I'm into this. And then the contestant gets it right, you're like, right, want them to win now.
Yeah,
It's one of
yeah,
those things you can never,
absolutely.
when it's totally out of context, it's just quite nice
Yeah,
to hear, isn't it?
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's different things, isn't it? But it is like Evan has been part of there's quite a few shows we've seen mentioned over the years. We've got mentioned Evan's been mentioned, not necessarily in glowing terms, shall I say? So I won't go into them. But yeah, it's. I think in the early seventies, Ed Stewart was the great Evertonian. Also, Judy Dent got mentioned in one of the shows, and is it an her husband who sadly died? I think was mentioned. Michael Williams. He went to our school. Michael Williams. He
All
was
right, okay.
way before me. Our Latin teacher always used to go on. Would you believe I taught Latin? And our teacher was going, Michael Williams, like great fella because he was a great actor at the time. Is like, this is who you should all look up to. I think they did a bit of fundraising for Everton, I think, in the time. But yeah, there's quite a few, but some are very tenuous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll get that list out for the next one.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Cheers for that, Gav. Loved it. Thanks for
Like,
sharing
yeah,
all that with us.
I said to you, I waited. As soon as this show came, started doing this, I said I'd love to do that show,
Oh,
and I've heard all of them, and you've got to listen to the back catalogue. They are brilliant, lots of different views, and very well hosted by your good self, and I look forward to a lot more. You might get James Judy Dench on or Sylvester Stallone at some point.
might as well have a go.
Anyway,
Why
yeah,
not? Don't see why
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah,
Cheers
great,
for that, Gav.
great.
Great stuff. Nice
Cheers,
one,
mate.
mate. Have you got anything coming up that you wanna plug? Any more books in the
Well,
pipeline or anything?
various projects in train is what people say, don't they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep our eyes peeled then.
Watch this space later on this year. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cheers, Gav. Nice one. Take it easy.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll catch you next time on Old New Borrowed Blue.